Bill, what did you tell me? 42% of the
42%.
teams you coach added
Uh-huh.
$1 million to their bottom line this year.
Yeah. $1 million top line revenue,
Top
right?
line
So
revenue. Okay.
top revenue.
What's the secret to that?
Really great question. If I look at all of them, most of them I've coached now for 2 years, right? So this is year number two of working
Yeah.
with them. And like you and I were talking about, in year one with a lot of these teams, what I have to do as I come in is I've got to deconstruct to re-engineer, right? They built it in a not incredibly effective and efficient manner, right? And it's
Yeah.
not because they're smart or they're not intelligent. These are some of the best team leads and some of the best minds, and I think in all of North America from a real estate space. But there's gaps and holes that they don't recognize, right? And like you and I were talking about, what is the system? What is it that takes place? I don't even, it's crazy, DT. I don't even go to recruiting first. And I know that there's other coaches out there that they're like, keep recruiting, right? And my belief is this, that if you recruit into a system that is broken or ineffective, what you're going to do is you're actually going to do more harm than good. As a leader, you can dilute the culture. I remember, I forget who it was that I was talking to. I think it was like Gino Buffari, right? So, who I love to death and think the world of. And he said, man, when you're the CEO, which these team leads are the CEO of their organizations, you
Absolutely.
have two goals. Number one is hold the vision of the company and to be able to actually push big initiatives forward, right? And number two is to guard the culture like a mama bear. You know what I mean? I think part of that cultural responsibility is making sure that the people that you bring in have an appropriate system that they can plug into and that they can crush it, right? And so before I even talk recruiting, because it could be like 60 to 90 days before we actually really attack the recruiting piece, what we attack is the onboarding. What is the existing onboarding to be able to bring someone in? And it's really a 90-day window, right? The first 30 days is an intense boot camp that I've always said, hey, listen, the onboarding, that boot camp should do a couple of things. Number one, it should bring somebody out of that 30 days, dude, and they should be, number one, super disciplined on the fundamentals of prospecting, following the schedule, and appropriate follow-up, right? Okay. And
Yep.
and it like one of the things I love about you too, DT, and maybe you can talk about this for yourself and what you've done in the teams that you coach. We keep it simple. Like, you know what I mean? Like this system is not overly complex. And I think because of that, people can adopt it very, very quickly, right? Okay. And that's like there's a lot of other organizations out there that really make it very complicated and very complex. And I know for myself, when Aaron Chu and myself and Ryan Marshall had our mortgage company, man, we just kept it as simple as possible. You know what I mean? And because of that, we were able to scale and grow and move from 87 people to 2,000 that we had in directlender.com. And for my real estate team, right, when we were operating in Salt Lake and down with John Ames in St. George and with Alex Lair over in San Francisco and Ty Leon Guerrera and Chris Heller. I mean, those were our partners that we had partnered with. We're like these amazing people that we were basically flexing before there was a Zillow Flex, right? I had 7 ISAs here because what better place to find people to be on the phones than Utah when people come back from their mission, right? So if they can sell God door to door, I knew that they could set appointments. And so we figured out a way to generate leads and we figured out a way to set appointments.
Mhm.
That was it, right? And then we figured out a way to hold accountable and train our partners. 3 pieces. So when you go back to this piece, on what we do when a team comes to work with us. Obviously, there's the analysis. We got to analyze, we got to look at. That analysis is both like 3 components. It's analysis of the leader as a leader, analysis of the operations and systems, and analysis of the level of the sales skills that the organization or the team has. And from that, we can determine which route we go. I almost always we have 2 things. A, we got to fix the onboarding, but B, we got also in many cases have to fix the coaching and the training that the team lead is actually doing with the agents. So yeah. So you go back to that onboarding, dude. It's really simple. It's 4 weeks designed to do 2 things. They have to do 3 hours of prospecting, and then they're certified week by week because the second piece of the entire onboarding or boot camp itself is are they skillful enough to be able to represent the brand and produce results with pay to play leads? eventually, right? And so they have to be certified every week on a new skill set, a new dialogue, a new script, and then that's setting the tone of the culture. Because the promise I make to every one of the team leads that I work with, every one of the teams, is I say, give me 6 months and we're going to have a culture of prospecting. And then meanwhile, and just like you, TT, I'm, doing the coaching and the training 2 times a month with the team where we're beginning to actually build skills with the existing teams, drive conversion, get them on schedules. And that's a little bit heavier lift to take people that have been doing it one way and try to get them, to do it another. But, like one of the things I learned from one of my old partners was, and I didn't learn it, we discussed it together. And I'll give him a shout out as Chad, you know what I mean? Chad and I talked about this and we both came, I thought it was 30%. He said 20. So we came in the middle. And that when you recruit and you have 25% of your existing organization is following this model of show up every day, prospect for 2 to 3 hours, use scripts and dialogues, that new guard changes the culture, right? From the
100%. Yeah.
do you see that? How many people do you have on your team right now?
I think we're at about 100, 105, somewhere in there. Yeah.
Yeah, have you found?
Yeah.
I mean, obviously you built it from the beginning with that intent, but
Oh,
do you notice, you know?
you bring 5 great people in and then just you level them up because quite frankly, our job as team leaders is to make our agents successful, right? If we concentrate on leveling them up, making them successful, reaching their goals, it just at that point, all you do is spread the word about what you're doing. I mean, you mentioned when people come into our schedules, often it's recruiting, recruiting, recruiting is what they think they need. And quite frankly, recruiting is a natural progression of a great running team. You have a great running team, recruiting just happens, right? So we have to actually tackle the team and make the team efficient, make the team so everybody is reaching their goals. I mean, so often, Bill, when you look at, for example, you pull up Zillow, right? And you look at a team and you'll see 0 sales, 2 sales, 0 sales, maybe 5, right? And maybe somebody's doing 10 or 20, right? But then you look at another team and you say like 10, 15, 12, 8, 20, 50, and the whole team is producing. That causes recruiting. Make the
So,
agent successful, recruiting just happens.
it's so funny you say that. You're so spot on, right? Okay. Nothing is more attractive from a recruiting standpoint than success, right? And, we were talking about Preston, one of our salespeople here internally for our organization, right? We have 5 salespeople right now, and we're going to grow that obviously in 2026. I know because he's moving out. Like there's a kid that's like still with his parents. Now he's moving out, getting his own place, and he's starting to talk. And his friends are starting to say, "Well, tell me more about this. What is it that you're doing? Are they hiring? You know what I mean? And why? It's because of the success that he's having. And we run our G3 sales floor the same way that we coach our teams too. Daily training, accountability, numbers, standards. And that's the other piece as well too that when we start that I think as a team lead you got to really look at is you can't be afraid to implement standards. If you're giving people leads, you have the right, and I think it's a responsibility to be able to say, here's the standards. Now, we always, when we set it up, it's like if you have higher producing agents and you can be a little hands off with them, then they opt out of standards based upon production. But if they drop below that production level, like which you have to establish based upon the organization, they drop below that production level for 90 days. Guess what? Here come the standards, not because, hey, we want big margins and we want this and whatever. Of course, all businesses are run based upon profit and margins are important, but it's also a responsibility that you have, I think, as a team lead to the people that are trusting you with their lives, right? If they're going to be on the team, the responsibility is when you create a standard, and that's one of the other pieces that like, it's literally one of the first things that we do is we say, what's the standard and what's the playbook? The standard is typically quarterly based on, and it's not like numbers of contacts and stuff. That's a part of it that comes in the playbook. It's how many homes do we expect an agent to sell on our team, right? For 3 reasons. Number one, the first thing is, can they live a good life on that standard? You know what I mean? So I was coaching a substantial team in Detroit, too far from me, who I won't name. And they were like, our standard's going to be 5. And I ran the numbers. I'm like, okay, that's like $30,000 a year that someone's going to earn and keep. Like, is that enough for someone? Can you feel good saying, I promise you a lifestyle of $30,000? So we had to move it up to a higher number. And I went back and forth with the leadership, and we finally got it up to a point where it's like, okay, cool. If someone in Detroit is earning, $55,000, $60,000, they may not be popping crystal and flying first class, but they're living a decent life. They're living, a good enough life where we can feel appropriate with it as a leader, right? And so you go,
Yeah.
number one, can they live a good life? Number two, can we monetize on it? Are our margins good enough on that, right? So does it work for them? Does it work for us fiscally? When I say us, it's funny, I always refer to the teams that I coach as if it's my business, because that's the way that I
It's fun.
approach it. Like there's money, it's like my money. You know what I mean? They lose
Mhm.
it to a member, it's like I just lost a team member. They recruit someone, then have a great recruiting month. I
You
don't
have
take
your
credit.
paper.
I feel it. You know what I
Hmm.
mean? And so, can they live a good life? Are the margins good enough to be able for it to make sense and be profitable for us as a company? And number three is that standard close enough to the existing production so that's not unrealistic and you don't roll it out? I can never do that. Right. So,
About somebody joining a team, just picture this for a second. You have one team over here and they have very low standards, and maybe the average person selling two or three houses. And you have another team over here and the average person selling 15 houses. And you're a new agent, experience doesn't matter, but you join the two to three, what's your expectations? If you join a team, everybody's selling 30, what's your chance of selling 30? It's
yeah.
going to be
You
great. So it's
know,
having those standards actually impacts everybody's production.
call it the banister effect, right? I've never
Oh,
heard anyone refer to this. Right? He's not up in my office because we're in transition into our new offices. I have a picture of Roger Bannister. Roger Bannister broke the 4 minute mile back in 1954, I think it was, right? And I have the picture. I'll show it to my team leads. Like, I'll turn my
mhm.
camera around. Do you know who that is? And they're like, no, I don't know who that is. I'm like, that's Roger Bannister. Do you know the name? I think I've heard it. But which, by the way, there's a really good. You should watch this, DT. It's called Bannister. It's on Netflix, and it's
No way.
about him. He went
Okay.
through to break that 4 minute mile. I mean, it's fun. It's so good. Like it's up there with the Last Dance for me. You know what I mean? Like the thing on the Chicago Bulls. Anyway, which I know being in Michigan, you probably are not a Bulls fan. You're a Pistons fan, but we can still be friends. Okay, so
Yes.
anyway, but I keep it up there. And when I show the team leads this, I say, "Do you know why it is that I have that up?" And they said, because he did something no one else has done. I said, no, right? That's not it. Because the next year, 8 people broke the 4 minute barrier, right? Like I said to Preston, who's he's our top salesperson right now at G3. I said, you're Roger Bannister. Do you know who it is? And here's this 21-year-old kid. And he's like, no. And I said, you're the person that's showing everyone else that it's possible. And when everyone else sees it's impossible, the belief shifts. And then they
Mhm.
start doing that. So to your point, it's spot on. If I come into a team and everyone's running a 4 minute mile, I'm like,
You're going to
well, it's just not,
perform at a mile.
not a 4 minute mile. I go to a
Yeah.
team, everyone's running an 8 minute mile. I will perform and rise to the expectations and the people that are around me. You know what I
Doesn't.
mean?
And when we
Yeah.
think about the inside of a team, when you have low producers, what does it do? Well, first of all, it affects the culture. It lowers the standard of the conversation, right? The next thing it does, your transactions, the low producers are the ones we have problems with transactions because simply this, Bill, they're not writing enough transactions to know what they're doing, right? The third,
Liability.
yeah,
Liability. Yeah. Sorry.
liability, 100%. Third thing, the team leader isn't excited to be around them,
Yeah.
which, by the way, probably is the biggest one because it affects your attitude that affects the entire company. And the fourth thing, it affects recruiting.
Yeah.
Because if you have agents on your team that are not producers, that aren't doing a good job, other people look at it and they're like, what team do I want to join? So it impacts the recruiting. So we
About
have to have standards on our team,
you have to standards. But here's what's unfair. Okay. Because I will say
right?
something.
Yeah.
Interesting because I got the chance prior to launching this company to work with one of the larger coaching companies that works with teams. And I came in and to some of the biggest names who I won't name, right? But some of
Hmm.
the biggest names in the real estate space, some of whom now I coach, right? Okay. Still coach, but I coach them at this organization. And I said, what's your standard? They're like 24. What's your standard? 24 homes a year. Like, and all of a sudden, I like went from one to the next to the next. I said, were you guys in a freaking room? And someone said that the goal needs to be 24 for all your agents. And they're like, well, actually, yes. And the tough part about that is if you don't run that three-step vetting process, is it enough for them to live a good life? Is it enough for us to make sense on margins? And is it close enough in order for them to actually have some belief around it as well, too? The leaders, what I noticed is they weren't behind the standard. It was just a number. You know what I mean? There wasn't any type of
Yeah.
juice. And so when you build that
Mm.
out, and then they roll it out to the teams, they would roll out that 24, and then they wouldn't stick to it. And so the team's just like, it's
Yeah.
not really a standard if you can't get behind it. So one of the major reasons why standards fail, I think the secondary reason is this. And this is the second step that I work on with someone with a team, is we develop the playbook. And we say, and a lot of times what we land on is a number around 16. Like it's sort of interesting because 16 transactions a year. And by the way, I like derivatives of four because then you can break it into a quarterly number, right? Standards should be looked at on a quarterly basis, not a monthly basis, because someone can have a whole January and then a really good February and March. And if you're doing it on a monthly basis, it's just an appropriate pressure on looking at the reality of how real estate runs, right? Okay. Because you're just not going
Mhm.
to have some single month like two, 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 or, one, one, one.
Mhm.
You're going to have 0 to 1, or like if your standard's 12 or whatever. Southern California or California teams, standards a little bit lower. It's about 12, right? Because
Mhm.
higher price point, a little bit more competition, et cetera. Anyway, so the second piece is once you've identified the standard and have belief in it as a leader, then the second piece is, can you build out the playbook? And this is something that I think is really important for us as we talk about this mastermind that's coming out, the accelerated mastermind. These are some of the topics that we're going to be tackling and hearing from some of the top teams that are selling 500, 600, 800 homes per year, how they did this, what roadblocks or road bumps that or speed bumps that they had to overcome, right? How they mentally handled losing team members as they implemented this, because you're going to break some eggs to make the omelet. You know what I mean? Especially as you're shifting the culture. But the playbook, I remember I did this with Michael Barrett. Michael Barrett, one of our team members that went over that added $1 million to their existing top line revenue this year in a market in Denver, Colorado that was not supportive of that at all. You know what I mean? Like it was a challenging market. Anyway, then you have this playbook that's about 6 to 8 steps that I always talk to the team lead on. And I say, okay, if I sat down with you and I came into your office and I said, my goal's 16, what are the 6 to 8 steps that I've got to do on a daily or weekly basis, the playbook that will guarantee that I hit that? And so now that they build it out, see a lot of the same things from playbook to playbook, but see, it's unfair, in my opinion, right? And my experience, not my opinion, my experience. It's unfair to have a standard and not have the pathway to success to be able to actually hit that, right?
That's
And
our job.
that's our job. Yeah. You're doing a disservice
Mhm.
to your
Yeah.
agents, and you're
Yes.
actually, you're right. You're not doing your job as a leader, which is provide the environment, right? Provide the coaching and the training and accountability, right? And ultimately provide the opportunity that maybe I don't have, aka leads and other shit like that. But
Yeah.
without that playbook, man, people look at the standard and they're like, the fuck am I gonna get there?
Mhm.
Okay, what do I do? What do I change, et cetera? So now the
Yeah.
playbook is the accountability piece as well, too, right?
Mhm.
And it also comes when we roll out of the 30-day boot camp, then the next 60 days is the implementation of the higher level skills for the disciplines and the rituals and routines, because a lot of people make this mistake. A lot of team leads. I train them for 30 days, go.
You go.
You're like, no, they're toddlers. Like yes, they know how to walk, but like I wouldn't let my toddler walk. You have kids, I have kids. When they're like 5 years old, this is the time that they're like deadly in a bad way because they're mobile and stupid, right? And so I don't want my toddler or 3 or 4 years old, like walking down the freaking side of a major road and literally that's what happens if we take them for 30 days and then we throw them out. You owe it to them, right, as a leader to have another 60 days of training. So we call it boot camp and launch. The boot camp is the 30 days designed to make them like fundamentally strong to be able to do like open houses, buyer presentation, handle the key objections, convert leads over and call their sphere, and have the disciplines of 2 hours and show 2 hours a day minimum prospecting showing up into the office. It's typically what we see. But it's also designed to vet people out, right? Because, you'll see who's got the commitment, who's committed, and who's said they're committed, but just interested, right? And then they get into the launch. The launch is, they still have to come into the office every day. That's one of the things I would love to really stress is you want your agents to come into the office. I don't care who you are. I don't care what you say. I'll battle you on this 100%. And I think it's stupid to try and train them virtually at boot camp. Like I see that as a major loss, and to use technology only as your training, aka any of the online training portals that a lot of people use and say, hey, go finish these courses, go do this shit. That's not going to work. But then the next 6 month, 2 and 3, it's a continuation of training. Now you're training them on, real life scenarios, other pieces, but they're still coming into the office and they're really folding into the culture at that time. Right. So, yeah.
The challenges some of the larger teams have, because it covers such a large area, is how do you still keep that culture of being in the office every single day when you literally might cover a 5-hour area from one side to the other side? Because quite frankly, when you're a small team, that's easy to do. You're usually local. But as we expand into bigger teams, we have challenges like how do we keep that culture going? How do we keep the environment going, the training, the coaching?
Really,
Yeah.
really. How do, yeah, I know. I'd ask you, how do you guys do it?
Well, we have multiple smaller offices, right? But for example, when we do our training, we go live on Facebook inside of our Facebook page. So people that can't make it actually can involve themselves. Do quarterly meetings where everybody shows up, right? Make sure that you're concentrating on all your agents in the outline, keeping them into the culture, right? Sometimes it's just literally calling one of your team members and just saying, how are you doing today? I mean, it from the leader standpoint, right? Keeping people part of that culture as you're expanding is a challenge for a lot of the big teams.
So I totally agree with you. We should run a case study on Brandon Landro, right? Because this guy's kicked ass. And Landro is already a 550 transaction a year producer, right? And when I came in to start to work with them, he was in a position where he was just like, I have all these people on my team that don't do what I ask. I don't want to recruit. I don't want more people. I don't want to train, right? So the really interesting thing was I said, cool, let's get rid of those people. Don't put any more time to the people that are not reciprocating back that are on your team. Just don't. Like, give them the option, give them the opportunity, but only pour in and only put time into the people that reciprocate back, aka they take the coaching, they do something with it, they don't push back, etc. Because he would show up like this, like just grumpy. Remember Grumpy Old Men? Do you remember that? Do you remember that
Yes.
movie?
Yeah.
Gosh, what were the two people's names? Lemon and the other guy. Anyway, like I'm gonna go
Yeah.
back. It's
So
so
this
fun.
this was Brandon.
This is Brandon's grumpy old man. Brandon was grumpy, man. Yeah, that's the point. Like, he's grumpy. I just show up on the call. And I said, we're gonna get you excited about this again. You know what I mean? Because there's no way I could talk to him about recruiting if he was pissed off. You know what I mean? So we did that. And now he's just lit up because he's, as a leader, why work with people or have people on your team that you're not excited to see and pour into?
Yeah,
Why?
absolutely. Yeah.
Life's way too short. And if chances are, if you're Monica Reynolds, my coach, said this to me, she goes, Pipes, anytime you get to a point where you're not excited to show up for a coaching call with someone, you get them out of your schedule, right? Or you need to get rid of them because chances are they're not excited to show up for the coaching call either. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And yeah, I took that to heart. And she also said to me, she goes, Pipes, you've earned the right over the years to only work with people that inspire you, right? And so I think that for a team lead as well too. Like if this person isn't inspiring you, what are they doing on your team? You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And every day is like you're going to walk in and go, right? Because you're dealing with all the other shit that you have to deal with in running an organization, right? Which is sometimes it's organized chaos sometimes. And our goal out of coaching is to remove the chaos and give you the system, right? Because if we can remove the chaos and give you the system, right, then you fall back in love with the business. In many cases, a lot of these team leads have fallen out of love with the business. And that was the case with Brandon. And dude, he's so excited right now and so lit up and so inspired. So he's got Milwaukee and he's got Appleton. He's got 2 locations. Okay. So what they do is 2 times a month, they're up in Milwaukee for their Wednesday meetings, right? Okay. I said to I said, brother, you need to get on the phone. You need to reach out to your Milwaukee agents. And it's not a coaching call. Once a month, he's doing a coaching session with them all individually.
Mhm.
And
Sure.
he's just making, I call them warm touches. What's up? What's with the family? How you
Those are
doing? What's
so important.
totally. And then it's about once every 2 months, everyone comes down to Appleton, right? All the Milwaukee team comes down to Appleton. And so they're all together. So there is a really simple way to be able to do that. You know what I mean? To be able to expand and to grow into a larger geographic location, but still maintain. And by the way, the standards maintain the culture, regardless of if it's an office that is away or an office that you're in every single day. You know,
People often join teams because of leads. That's one of the things, reason why people join teams. But Bill, they stay because of culture.
I agree, 100%. Yeah, totally.
Culture is so important, so important.
Yeah.
You talk about keeping things simple. There's really three things that we concentrate on. We concentrate on recruiting,
Mhm.
average agent production, and
Totally.
systems to support our clients and our agents, right? And a lot of people think that recruiting is the most important. And I'd say to them that it's average agent production. Because here's how that works average agent production. If we have high average agent production, people recognize that. Agents recognize that. And if I'm an agent that's sitting there thinking about, I want to join a team, and I have two teams I'm looking at, I have one team over here that nobody's producing, and another team that everybody's producing 10, 15, 20 transactions, right? Where am I going to go? I'm going to go to the team that's producing, right? Okay.
If I want to be a producer, you know what I
Yeah.
mean?
Now, if you're the hobbyist, which one are you going to go to?
To go to the one that doesn't have the
Okay.
actual the spurs. You know what I mean? It doesn't have that. Yeah,
So what we
because
build,
it intimidates me if I'm not serious. And
100%.
so it totally vets them out right at the very beginning. You know what I mean? So
So if we work on average agent production, recruiting becomes a natural progression of that. As we recruit more agents, our income goes up. As our income goes up, we're able to invest in people for the systems.
yeah.
Average agent production is what causes everything to work.
Do you know what's really interesting, DT,
Mm.
is
Yeah.
I remember I'm with Mike Ferry, right? This is how long ago this is. And we're in Palm Springs and we're getting ready to hop on a plane to fly to Toronto, actually, right? So, and this is how long ago it was when like limos were a thing. Do you remember like
Yeah.
limousines? I don't
Mhm.
know if one that really drives in a limo anymore, do you?
I
So
don't.
it's now like Suburbans, right? Or Escalades and shit. But once
Yeah.
upon a time, for those of you that don't remember, you would get in a limousine and the limousine would take you to the airport. Anyway, and it was Tom and myself and Mike. And I was really young. I think I was like 25 at the time,
Yeah.
26. And Tom turns to Mike and goes, "Oh, should we have the conversation with him?" And I'm like, and this is like 4:45, 5 o'clock in the morning for us to get up to go to the airport to be able to take a flight, commercial flight, to be able to get to. I was just, and I'm like half asleep, and they're like, "Sure." And I'm like, "Okay, cool." And they go, basically, they gave me this. A lot of these larger teams that you see are not making any money, and you got to make a decision on why you're going to do something, and either you're going to do it for this or you're going to do it for this, right? And they said, of course, the goal is always serving clients, but you're either serving clients for the ego gratification or you're doing it for profits, right? It was amazing to me 4 or 5 years ago. I got the chance to be able to get under the hoods of a lot of these teams. I literally was like, why the hell are you doing this? Like you're better off shutting this team down and going and selling real estate, and you'll 4 or 5x your profits and your margins, right? And so and you probably see this as well too, right? Okay. Where it's like you just look at it and you're like, you're running a margin. So I'm curious for you. Do you see that as well too, DT? Do you see these really thin margins sometimes when you get the teams to begin with?
I bet you when you really look at it, most teams across the country are ego driven. They're not profitable.
Yep.
Yeah.
I think
Yeah.
that
So
there's a team even in Michigan that we were talking about that I don't know how they're making any money.
yeah,
You know, like
ego driven and not profitable.
Yeah, totally.
Yeah, so there's kind of, when you look at a team, there's three financial stages that we go through. Okay, so if you just kind of look at this, let's just pretend your average agent selling 15 transactions, you're making $2,000 a deal on a transaction, you're making $30,000 an agent, right? You have your expenditures. You can figure out the math equation when your break-even point is. But stage number one, where a lot of teams are, is the team leader needs to be in production to pay the bills. Because Bill, if they weren't in production, they'd close the team. They're actually funding the company. Now, we want to get these people out of stage one, the team leaders, into stage two as quick as possible. And that's a math equation. So if your expenditures are X, right, or whatever your expenditures are X, I'm making $30,000 per agent. I can very quickly figure out how many agents I need to be that my team members are now paying all the bills. And that
At
means
a certain productivity
yeah,
level, right?
yeah,
Right.
exactly.
Pe-
15 transactions or 10 or whatever it is, whatever your average agent production is, and you figure average agent, how much money I make, two of the most important KPIs. How much money am I making per transaction after agent compensation on an average? Second one would be, what is my average agent production? That equals how much I make per agent. And you can divide that number into what your expenditures, and you could say, my break even point is 13 agents. So when you get to that point, you go to level two, right?
10 transactions average, let's say, right? Or
Whatever
something.
whatever the number is for that team. Now, stage number three is when you have your personal bills and your team cost, and you divide it again by that same number. Now, stage number three, it's like when I look at retirement, Bill, I don't look at the fact of when I'm going to retire. I look at the fact that, could I retire based on this kind of income? Do I have reached my goal where it's now a choice? When we get to stage number three, the team leader has the choice that they want to go out of production. And when you go out of production, you could invest all your time on building your organization. So it's really a math equation of where that break even point on your expenditures based on how many agents. And the next one is your personal expenses plus your business expense and what that number is. And those are points to celebrate is when we go to level two and we go to level three.
Sure. And level three is I have the freedom to either reinvest some of this capital outside the business because the business is now covering me personally and professionally, right? Or I can pull myself out of production. Do you know what I see? Because there was such a push in late 90s and early 2000s, even into the mid 2000s. Even actually, no, it started in the 90s, it expanded in the early 2000s, and I saw it really heading about 2010, 2011, 2012. This idea of a seventh level, some team leads, a lot of them, because it was one primary organization that was talking about this, moved so fast to the seventh level, right, of getting the team lead out of production that the margins, which you can make dumb moves in a good market and those dumb moves will be hidden, right? Okay.
There's a lot of truth
Like
to that statement.
yeah, they'll be hidden. And then when you really see the validity of your model is when the market is tough or it begins to shift, right? And
Mhm.
at that point, you really see the resilience of the model and whether it's effective or whether it's not, right? And I think a lot of people got exposed, not in COVID, right? Because COVID was like, that was la la land, man. Like 2019, 2020, 2021. There was so much hidden mistakes that were made by team leads, people that were saying, hey, recruit, 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 recruit. Don't worry about production. You had organizations saying, focus on getting your downline big. Don't sell a lot of like, all of that dialogue and conversation going on from multiple different input sources. Right. And then when 2022 began to shift in 2023, 2024, people, the proverbial tide went out and you got to see who was wearing pants. So
Your whole company is based on getting people to 1 million, right?
100%. That's why I left Tom Ferry. That was my vision is can we build a system? Can we build an organization? Can we give people the skills that within 3 years we can get them over $1 million, whether that's $1 million that they add to their revenue that they're currently sitting on, which we're talking teams, that's what you do, or
Yeah,
whether it's getting them across that seven-figure mark for the first time.
sure.
And It'll be interesting because I think we have enough data now at this point because we're 3 years as a company, right? We have enough data at this point to be able to say, here's the typical time frame for that. And I would tell you for an agent that's not at a million, that's underneath, depending upon where they start, if they start on 200, 250,000, it's typically probably a 2.5 to 2 3/4 year process, right? To be able
Yeah.
to get them on, right? For a team, I think it's 2 years, 2 years,
Yeah.
and they're popping an additional million because they already have the infrastructure and everything else and whatever. And by the way, when I built G3, I built it around, I said, I'm going to build this company based upon the model that I coach my teams to and that I coach my brokers to, right?
Yeah.
And
Hmm.
it's the same thing. I wanted to acquire the best talent. I wanted to give them the best leads, AKA coaching clients for them to be able to actually work with, right? And on top of that, I wanted to create a culture that was based upon a system, right? With an expectation that if you're going to be in this organization, right, as a client, we're going to get you to 7 figures. And if you don't want to get to
Nice.
7 figures, then we'll get you to wherever it is that you want to go, but we're going to get you there following the system. You know what I mean? But there is a standard, like I preach this from the stage. If you're not doing 7 figures, you're not like if you're not gunning for that, we're not the right organization for you. You know what I mean? Like we're just not. There's other companies out there that'll work with those agents that want to do 6 to 10 transactions a year, and God bless them. There's a space for every place. But dude, we will be smaller by design. Because I made a promise to David, to you as a coach. I said, we're not going to give you dumbasses. We're going to give you people that are committed. You know what I mean? I make a promise to our clients, whether that be the team leads or whether it be the individual agents as well too. We're going to put you with coaches that have walked the walk and done it, right? Like and that have actually produced. Like you with 100 agents, and was it 1,900? Like what you guys come in at?
1,493. We should have bought 7 houses, Bill.
You should have bought 7 houses to get to the 100, maybe.
1,500.
Yeah.
And we're on pace for about 2,000 right now. Yeah.
And watch, that's 3 years. You know what I mean? That's
Hmm.
that. You guys are year number 3, right? So
Into 4 now, but yeah.
and yeah, and we hit into 4 April 1st. Like as
Hmm.
an organization. I think that's the other piece as well too that people got to realize is like if you're starting a team, it's that depending upon your overhead, that fiscal model could take a couple of years for you to get to that third level. You know what I mean?
Mhm.
So
Yeah.
and that's okay. You know what I mean? Like it really is okay that it does take a little bit of time because wouldn't you rather want to build it right and not have to go back and re-engineer it and destruct it in order to construct it? So
100%. But it does start with building the plan. And you can plan this all out, right? I mean, if you take our team, we had 1,000 transactions pace per year in 36 months, right?
yeah,
And we did that by hiring 72 agents from zero. That sounds like a lot, but it took us 36 months. Bill, that's 2 agents per month.
yeah, totally.
Consistency, right? Yeah. People
So
have a tendency of overestimating what they can do in a short period of time, but underestimating what they can do over a long period of time, right? It's
right,
the
it's
consistency of your activities over a period of time that equals success.
absolutely one of the greatest statements and more true to that than anything else. You know what I mean?
Mhm.
And I'll put a little caveat on that. Something I learned from Mike is everything takes longer than you expect. Right. So
That too.
yeah,
Yeah.
like this
Yeah.
marathon sprint. Now a marathon has little sprints inside of it. So this year, I think about some of the teams, they may not have hit a million, but their margins were tripled in terms of what they kept. Like Jim Griffin, who we both have worked with, who's a coach for our
Yes.
company.
Yeah.
He's like, Pipes, man, I don't know how much longer I can do this. And, like all this time, all this energy, all this effort, etc. We're paid like month to month, right? And I said, who's this listing agent on your team? He said, well, I am. And I said, how many listing presentations are you going out on, per month? He goes, hardly any. I go, well, if you want margins, the quickest way for you to be able to drive margins up is for you to put yourself back in production. I did that with about 4 different teams this year. I said, you're going back, you're going back, you're going back, you're going back. Get your ass back in production because there's no better way to mainline profitability, bottom line than you getting in production. Because here's what they were doing. They were they were acting like they were a third level fiscal team when really they were a first level fiscal team, right?
Yeah. Hmm.
So sometimes you have to go backwards to go forward, right? So
100%. Thanks for watching. This is David Thompson. David Thompson 360 podcast can be found at any of your podcast players or at davidthompson360.com.